AudioBooksTube is glad to produce, publish, and offer Consciousness, Self-Conscious, and What is Consciousness? By Sage D. Esotreasure. Hi. Before we delve in the book, if you enjoy listening to our content, we'd love your support. Most of you watch and listen, but many haven't hit that subscribe button yet. If everyone who enjoys our audiobooks subscribed, we could grow this channel and create even better content just for you. So go ahead, click that subscribe button and join our community. Together, we can make this channel thrive. And now, back to the narration. Chapter 1: The Origins of Consciousness. The question of where consciousness originates has fascinated scientists, philosophers, and theologians for centuries. At the heart of this inquiry is the desire to understand how simple biological processes gave rise to something as complex and mysterious as conscious awareness. The origins of consciousness can be traced back to the evolutionary process, beginning with the simplest life forms and leading to the sophisticated brains of humans and other animals. This chapter will explore the gradual emergence of consciousness through evolution, from basic sensory awareness to the complex mental phenomena we associate with self-awareness. Early life and basic awareness. Consciousness did not appear suddenly in nature. Instead, it likely emerged gradually as life forms evolved over millions of years. The earliest life on Earth, single-celled organisms like bacteria, lacked anything that we would recognize as consciousness. However, even these simple organisms exhibited behaviors that suggest the rudiments of awareness, at least in terms of their ability to sense and respond to environmental stimuli. For example, bacteria can move toward nutrients and away from harmful substances. While this is a purely chemical and biological process, it represents the earliest forms of sensory awareness. These organisms do not think or feel in any conscious sense, but they are responsive to their environment in a way that is fundamental to survival. As life evolved, so did the complexity of these sensory responses. Multicellular organisms began to emerge, with specialized cells that could detect changes in the environment. Simple organisms like sponges and jellyfish possess nervous systems that, while rudimentary, allow them to coordinate movements and react to stimuli in more complex ways. This stage in evolutionary history marks the beginning of a slow transition toward more sophisticated forms of awareness. The evolution of neural networks. As organisms continued to evolve, the development of neural networks became a crucial step in the emergence of consciousness. Neural networks are essentially groups of interconnected neurons, nerve cells that transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. The simplest animals with nervous systems, such as jellyfish and flatworms, use these networks to process sensory information and generate motor responses. The evolution of neural networks allowed organisms to process more complex information about their surroundings. Instead of simple reactions, like moving toward food, animals with neural networks could begin to integrate multiple types of sensory input, such as light, sound, and touch, and make more adaptive decisions. This ability to process information in a more sophisticated way is a precursor to what we think of as conscious awareness. One key innovation in the evolution of neural networks was the development of centralized nervous systems. Instead of having neurons scattered throughout the body, as in simpler organisms, animals like worms and insects evolved clusters of neurons that acted as control centers for processing information. These control centers, or ganglia, can be thought of as the evolutionary precursors to brains. The emergence of brains. The next major step in the evolution of consciousness was the development of brains. A brain is essentially a highly centralized and complex neural network that allows an organism to process vast amounts of information quickly and efficiently. The evolution of brains enabled animals to make more complex decisions, exhibit more flexible behaviors, and, eventually, develop the capacity for conscious thought. The first brains likely emerged in early vertebrates, such as fish, around 500 million years ago. These early brains were relatively simple, primarily responsible for coordinating movement and processing basic sensory information. However, as vertebrates evolved, their brains became more complex. In particular, the development of the cerebral cortex, a layer of neural tissue that covers the brain, was a key innovation in the evolution of consciousness. The cerebral cortex is responsible for many of the higher functions associated with consciousness, such as perception, decision-making, and self-awareness. In mammals, and especially in primates, the cerebral cortex expanded significantly, allowing for the development of more sophisticated cognitive abilities. This expansion of the brain's cortical areas is one of the factors that likely contributed to the emergence of complex consciousness in humans and other advanced species. Sensory processing and the construction of reality. With the development of more advanced brains came the ability to process sensory information in increasingly complex ways. The brain does not simply passively receive information from the senses, it actively constructs a model of reality based on that input. This process of constructing reality is a key feature of consciousness. For example, the visual system in mammals is not simply a camera that records images. Instead, the brain processes visual information in multiple stages, integrating it with information from other senses and prior knowledge to create a coherent representation of the world. The same is true for other sensory systems, such as hearing and touch. In many ways, this construction of reality is the foundation of conscious experience. Consciousness is not just about being aware of stimuli, it is about creating a unified, meaningful interpretation of those stimuli. This interpretive process allows animals to navigate their environment more effectively, making decisions that enhance their chances of survival and reproduction. Early forms of awareness in animals. As brains continued to evolve, so did the capacity for awareness. Many animals exhibit behaviors that suggest some degree of conscious awareness. For example, mammals like dogs and dolphins show signs of problem-solving, social interaction, and even emotional responses. These behaviors indicate that these animals have a level of consciousness that allows them to perceive their environment, remember past experiences, and plan future actions. However, the nature and extent of animal consciousness are still topics of debate among scientists. While it is clear that many animals possess some form of awareness, it is less clear whether they experience self-awareness in the same way that humans do. For instance, some animals, such as primates and elephants, have passed the mirror test, which is often used to measure self-recognition and, by extension, self-awareness. Other animals, despite their complex behaviors, do not appear to recognize themselves in mirrors, raising questions about the nature of their conscious experience. From awareness to self-awareness. The final step in the evolution of consciousness is the emergence of self-awareness, the ability to reflect on one's own thoughts and experiences. While many animals exhibit forms of awareness, humans are unique in their capacity for introspection and self-reflection. This ability to think about thinking, to be aware of one's own mental states, is a defining feature of human consciousness. The evolutionary origins of self-awareness are not fully understood, but it is likely that this trait conferred significant survival advantages. Self-awareness allows individuals to plan for the future, anticipate the actions of others, and navigate complex social environments. It may also have played a role in the development of language, art, and culture, all of which are intimately tied to the human experience of consciousness. The origins of consciousness can be traced back through millions of years of evolution, beginning with the simplest forms of sensory awareness and culminating in the sophisticated self-awareness of humans. This gradual process involved the evolution of neural networks, centralized nervous systems, and brains capable of processing complex sensory information. As brains became more advanced, so did the capacity for constructing a model of reality, making decisions, and ultimately reflecting on one's own thoughts and experiences. In the chapters that follow, we will explore how this evolutionary process has shaped the way humans and other animals experience consciousness today, and what this means for our understanding of the mind, reality, and the nature of existence. Chapter 2: The Architecture of the Brain. To understand consciousness, we must first examine the biological foundation that makes it possible, the brain. The human brain is an incredibly complex organ, comprising approximately 86 billion neurons that interact with each other to produce thoughts, emotions, sensations, and, ultimately, conscious experience. This chapter will explore the architecture of the brain, focusing on its key regions and how they work together to generate consciousness. We will delve into the structure and function of neurons, the critical role of synaptic connections, and how different brain areas integrate to create our subjective experience of reality. Neurons, the building blocks of the brain. At the core of the brain's functioning are neurons, specialized cells that transmit information through electrical and chemical signals. Each neuron has three main parts: the cell body, or soma, dendrites, and an axon. The dendrites receive signals from other neurons, while the axon transmits signals to other neurons, muscles, or glands. These cells are the fundamental units of the brain's communication system, and the signals they send allow the brain to process sensory information, control movement, and produce conscious thought. Neurons communicate with each other through a process known as synaptic transmission. When a neuron is activated, it generates an electrical impulse, which travels down the axon and reaches the synapse, the small gap between neurons. At the synapse, the electrical signal is converted into a chemical signal, as neurotransmitters are released into the gap and bind to receptors on the receiving neuron. This process allows the signal to continue traveling through the brain's vast neural network, enabling communication across different brain regions. The strength of the connections between neurons, known as synaptic plasticity, is critical for learning, memory, and consciousness. When neurons frequently communicate, their connections become stronger, making future transmissions easier and faster. This process, known as long-term potentiation, is thought to be a key mechanism underlying learning and memory formation. The brain's major regions. The brain is divided into several major regions, each of which plays a crucial role in different aspects of consciousness. These regions include the brainstem, cerebellum, thalamus, and cerebral cortex, among others. While all parts of the brain are interconnected and work together to produce consciousness, each region has specialized functions that contribute to our conscious experience. The brainstem. The brainstem is the most primitive part of the brain and is responsible for regulating basic life functions such as heart rate, breathing, and sleep. Located at the base of the brain, the brainstem connects the brain to the spinal cord, allowing the brain to communicate with the rest of the body. While the brainstem is not directly involved in conscious thought or perception, it plays a critical role in maintaining the overall state of wakefulness necessary for consciousness to occur. The brainstem also contains the reticular activating system, RAS, a network of neurons that regulates arousal and attention. The RAS controls the brain's level of alertness, determining whether we are awake, asleep, or in an altered state of consciousness. Without the proper functioning of the brainstem and the RAS, consciousness would be impossible, as the brain would be unable to maintain the wakeful state necessary for awareness. The thalamus. The thalamus is often referred to as the brain's relay station because it plays a central role in processing and transmitting sensory information to the cerebral cortex. Located near the center of the brain, the thalamus receives input from the body's sensory organs, such as the eyes and ears, and forwards this information to the appropriate areas of the cortex for further processing. The thalamus is critical for consciousness because it serves as a gateway for sensory information to reach the cortex, where conscious perception occurs. Without the thalamus, sensory information would not be integrated into our awareness, and our ability to perceive the external world would be severely impaired. Additionally, the thalamus plays a role in regulating attention and filtering out irrelevant sensory information, allowing us to focus on specific stimuli while ignoring others. The cerebellum. The cerebellum, located at the back of the brain beneath the cerebral cortex, is primarily responsible for coordinating movement and maintaining balance. While the cerebellum is not directly involved in generating conscious thoughts or perceptions, it plays an important role in unconscious motor control. The cerebellum helps fine-tune movements, allowing for smooth and precise actions, and it contributes to learning motor skills through repetition. Interestingly, recent research has suggested that the cerebellum may play a role in some aspects of cognitive processing and consciousness. Studies have shown that the cerebellum is involved in tasks such as language processing, attention, and emotion regulation, although its exact contribution to conscious experience remains an area of ongoing research. The cerebral cortex. The cerebral cortex is the outer layer of the brain and is the region most closely associated with consciousness. This part of the brain is responsible for higher cognitive functions such as perception, reasoning, decision-making, and self-awareness. The cerebral cortex is divided into 4 main lobes: the frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital lobes, each of which has specialized functions. Frontal lobe. The frontal lobe is responsible for executive functions such as decision-making, problem-solving, planning, and impulse control. It also plays a key role in personality and social behavior. The prefrontal cortex, located in the front part of the frontal lobe, is particularly important for self-awareness and conscious thought. Parietal lobe. The parietal lobe processes sensory information related to touch, temperature, and spatial awareness. It helps us integrate sensory input from different parts of the body and understand where objects are in relation to us, contributing to our sense of physical presence in the world. Temporal lobe. The temporal lobe is involved in processing auditory information and is critical for understanding language. It also plays a role in memory formation and the processing of emotions. The hippocampus, located in the temporal lobe, is essential for forming new memories, a key component of conscious experience. Occipital lobe. The occipital lobe is responsible for processing visual information. It interprets input from the eyes and helps us recognize shapes, colors, and movement. The visual cortex, located in this lobe, is essential for creating the vivid images that we perceive as part of our conscious experience. The integration of information across the brain. One of the most remarkable features of the brain is its ability to integrate information from different regions to create a unified conscious experience. This integration occurs through a process known as functional connectivity, in which different areas of the brain communicate and synchronize their activity. For example, when you see a familiar face, your brain must coordinate information from the visual cortex, which processes the image, the temporal lobe, which stores memory of the face, and the frontal lobe, which helps you recognize and react to the person. This integration is facilitated by large networks of neurons that span multiple brain regions. The 2 most prominent of these networks are the default mode network, DMN, and the salience network. The DMN is active when we are at rest and engaged in self-referential thinking, such as daydreaming or reflecting on our own thoughts. The salience network, on the other hand, helps us detect important stimuli in the environment and switch between different modes of attention. The ability of the brain to integrate information across different regions is essential for producing a coherent sense of self and a continuous flow of conscious experience. Disruptions in this integration, such as those caused by brain injuries or certain neurological disorders, can lead to fragmented consciousness or a loss of awareness altogether. Brain waves and states of consciousness. Another key aspect of the brain's architecture is the presence of brain waves, patterns of electrical activity that can be measured using electroencephalography, e.g. Different patterns of brain waves are associated with different states of consciousness. For example, beta waves are dominant when we are awake and alert, while alpha waves are more prevalent during relaxed, meditative states. During deep sleep, the brain produces delta waves, indicating a lower level of consciousness. These brain waves reflect the synchronized activity of large groups of neurons and are thought to play a role in coordinating the brain's various functions. Changes in brainwave patterns can indicate shifts in consciousness, such as when we fall asleep, enter a dream state, or experience an altered state of consciousness due to meditation or drugs. The architecture of the brain is the foundation of consciousness. Through the interactions of billions of neurons, organized into specialized regions and networks, the brain processes sensory information, integrates it into a coherent model of reality, and generates the rich tapestry of conscious experience. The cerebral cortex, thalamus, brainstem, and cerebellum all contribute in distinct ways to this process, ensuring that we are aware, alert, and able to navigate the world. Understanding the structure and function of the brain is crucial to unraveling the mysteries of consciousness itself. Chapter 3: Perception and Reality. Perception is the process through which our brains interpret and organize sensory information to create a conscious experience of the world. It is through perception that we construct reality. Our brain does not passively record the external world like a camera. Instead, it actively processes, filters, and interprets incoming sensory signals to generate a coherent model of the environment. This chapter explores how the brain takes raw sensory data and transforms it into our experience of reality, highlighting how perception is shaped by both biological mechanisms and cognitive processes. The sensory pathways. How information enters the brain. Our conscious perception of the world begins with the sensory organs, which detect various forms of external stimuli such as light, sound, pressure, and chemicals. These stimuli are then converted into electrical signals that are transmitted to the brain. The 5 traditional senses, vision, hearing, touch, taste, and smell, each have dedicated sensory organs and pathways that relay information to specific areas of the brain. Vision. Light enters the eye and is focused onto the retina, where specialized cells called photoreceptors convert light into electrical signals. These signals are sent through the optic nerve to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe of the brain, where they are processed and interpreted as images. Hearing. Sound waves enter the ear, causing vibrations in the eardrum and the tiny bones of the middle ear. These vibrations are transformed into electrical signals in the cochlea, a fluid-filled structure in the inner ear, and then transmitted via the auditory nerve to the auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. Touch. Sensory receptors in the skin detect pressure, temperature, and pain. These signals are sent through the spinal cord to the somatosensory cortex in the parietal lobe, where the brain processes the sensations and creates a tactile map of the body. Taste and smell. Taste buds on the tongue detect chemicals in food, while receptors in the nasal cavity detect airborne chemicals. These signals are processed by the gustatory cortex, for taste, and the olfactory cortex, for smell, which are located in the temporal lobe. While each sense has its own dedicated pathway, the brain integrates the information from all the senses to create a unified perception of reality. This multisensory integration is crucial for helping us navigate the world and make decisions based on the totality of our sensory experience. Perception is not objective, the brain as a reality constructor. Although the sensory organs provide the brain with raw data about the external world, perception is far from an objective representation of reality. The brain actively filters, prioritizes, and interprets sensory input based on context, past experiences, expectations, and even biological limitations. In other words, perception is a constructive process, and what we perceive is not an exact replica of the outside world, but a model created by the brain. One of the key reasons perception is not objective is that the brain must deal with an overwhelming amount of sensory information at any given moment. The brain cannot process all of this information simultaneously, so it selectively focuses on what it deems to be the most relevant or important stimuli. This process of selective attention is influenced by a variety of factors, including context. The brain uses contextual clues to help interpret sensory information. For example, if you see a vague shape in the distance on a foggy day, your brain might interpret it as a tree based on the context of being in a park, even if the actual shape is unclear. Expectations. Expectations shape perception by filling in the gaps of incomplete or ambiguous sensory information. If you are expecting to meet a friend at a coffee shop, you might mistakenly perceive a stranger as your friend because of the anticipation. Past experiences. The brain relies on past experiences to help interpret current sensory data. For instance, if you've been burned by touching a hot stove in the past, your brain will be more sensitive to heat-related stimuli in future encounters, altering your perception of temperature. These factors show that perception is subjective and context-dependent. The brain constantly adjusts its model of reality based on what it expects or assumes about the world, rather than just what it directly senses. The visual system, a case study in perception. Vision provides one of the clearest examples of how the brain constructs reality. While we experience vision as a seamless and accurate representation of the world, the process that underlies visual perception is anything but straightforward. When light enters the eye, it is converted into electrical signals by the retina and sent to the visual cortex in the occipital lobe. However, these signals are initially quite fragmented. Different parts of the visual system process different aspects of the image, such as color, shape, movement, and depth. These elements are processed in parallel by specialized regions of the brain, which then work together to create a coherent image. One of the most remarkable aspects of visual perception is that the brain often fills in missing information. The blind spot, for example, is an area on the retina where no photoreceptors are present, yet we are not consciously aware of this gap in our visual field. The brain fills in the missing data based on surrounding visual information, allowing us to experience an uninterrupted image. Visual illusions further demonstrate how the brain constructs reality. In the famous Muller-Lyer illusion, two lines of equal length appear to be different lengths because of the way arrow-like shapes are placed at their ends. This illusion occurs because the brain interprets the lines in the context of its past experience with three-dimensional space, leading it to perceive one line as longer than the other, even though they are the same length. The role of prediction and the brain's internal model. A central feature of perception is that the brain is constantly making predictions about the world. These predictions are based on prior knowledge and are used to anticipate incoming sensory information. This process is known as predictive coding, and it plays a key role in shaping our conscious experience. The brain's predictions act as a filter for incoming sensory data. Rather than waiting passively for sensory input, the brain generates an internal model of the world and continuously updates it as new information arrives. When sensory data matches the brain's predictions, the brain confirms its internal model and we perceive the world as stable and continuous. However, when there is a mismatch between the prediction and the actual sensory input, the brain adjusts its model to account for the new information. For example, if you are walking in a familiar neighborhood, your brain already has a detailed model of the environment. As you walk, your brain predicts the layout of the streets, buildings, and landmarks, allowing you to navigate effortlessly. However, if something unexpected appears, such as a new construction site, the brain must revise its model to incorporate the new information. This predictive process is efficient because it allows the brain to conserve energy by focusing only on discrepancies between its expectations and reality, rather than processing every detail of the environment from scratch. The influence of attention on perception. Attention is a crucial factor in determining what we perceive and how we experience reality. The brain's capacity to process sensory information is limited, so attention acts as a spotlight, highlighting certain stimuli while ignoring others. This selective focus allows us to concentrate on what is most important at any given moment, but it also means that we are constantly missing vast amounts of information. The phenomenon of inattentional blindness illustrates the power of attention in shaping perception. In one famous experiment, participants were asked to watch a video of people passing a basketball and count the number of passes. During the video, a person in a gorilla suit walked through the scene, but many participants failed to notice the gorilla because their attention was focused on counting the basketball passes. This experiment demonstrates that when we focus on one task or object, we can become blind to other, seemingly obvious stimuli in our environment. Attention also plays a role in change blindness, where people fail to notice significant changes in a visual scene when their attention is directed elsewhere. In one experiment, participants were shown two images that were identical except for a small difference. When the images were flashed alternately on the screen, participants often failed to notice the change, even though it was visible. This shows that perception is not just about seeing, but about where and how we direct our attention. Perception, reality, and conscious experience. Our perception of reality is a deeply personal and subjective experience, shaped by the brain's sensory processing, predictions, and attentional mechanisms. While we tend to trust our senses as providing an accurate reflection of the external world, the reality we perceive is a product of the brain's active interpretation and construction of sensory input. This understanding of perception has significant implications for our concept of reality. It suggests that there is no single, objective reality that we all perceive in the same way. Instead, each individual's reality is shaped by their brain's unique way of processing information, which is influenced by factors such as past experiences, attention, and expectations. As a result, two people can experience the same event in entirely different ways, depending on how their brains construct their perception of the event. Perception is the mechanism through which our brains construct reality. Far from being a passive process, perception involves active interpretation, filtering, and integration of sensory information, all of which are influenced by past experiences, expectations, and attention. Our conscious experience of the world is shaped by this constructive process, which allows us to navigate our environment efficiently while also introducing subjective biases and distortions into our perception of reality. Understanding how perception works sheds light on the complex relationship between the brain, consciousness, and the reality we experience. Chapter 4: Attention, Awareness, and the Nature of Conscious Experience. Attention and awareness are central to our understanding of consciousness. While the two are closely related, they serve different functions in shaping our conscious experience. Attention refers to the brain's ability to focus on specific stimuli or thoughts, allowing us to process information selectively. Awareness, on the other hand, refers to our ability to be conscious of and reflect on that information. Together, attention and awareness help determine what we experience and how we experience it. This chapter explores the relationship between attention, awareness, and consciousness, shedding light on how these processes shape our reality. Attention, the brain's spotlight. Attention is often described as a spotlight that highlights certain aspects of our environment while leaving others in the background. This selective focus is essential for functioning in a world filled with an overwhelming amount of sensory information. Without attention, we would be bombarded by stimuli and unable to process or respond to them effectively. The brain uses attention to prioritize information, allowing us to concentrate on what is most important at any given moment. There are different types of attention, each serving distinct purposes. Selective attention. This is the ability to focus on one specific task or stimulus while ignoring others. Selective attention allows us to concentrate on a conversation in a noisy room or focus on reading while tuning out background noise. It involves filtering out irrelevant information to enhance the processing of relevant stimuli. Divided attention. This type of attention involves multitasking or splitting focus between multiple tasks or stimuli. While humans can divide their attention to some extent, the brain's capacity for multitasking is limited. When we try to focus on several things at once, performance in each task often suffers. Sustained attention, also known as concentration. Sustained attention refers to the ability to maintain focus on a task or stimulus over an extended period. This is crucial for activities like reading, studying, or driving, where sustained mental effort is required. Shifting attention. The brain also has the ability to rapidly shift attention from one stimulus to another. This flexibility allows us to respond to changes in our environment, such as when we hear a sudden loud noise and immediately turn our focus toward its source. Attention is controlled by multiple brain networks, including the dorsal attention network, which directs attention to external stimuli, and the ventral attention network, which responds to unexpected events. These networks work together to help us stay focused on tasks while remaining alert to potential distractions. Awareness, the scope of consciousness. While attention allows us to focus on specific stimuli, awareness defines the broader scope of what we are conscious of. Awareness involves both external stimuli, such as sights, sounds, and touch, and internal experiences, such as thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations. In many ways, awareness can be seen as the backdrop of consciousness, our general state of being conscious of ourselves and our surroundings. There are different levels of awareness, ranging from low-level awareness, such as the sensation of breathing, to high-level awareness, such as self-reflection and abstract thinking. Awareness fluctuates throughout the day, with periods of heightened awareness, such as during focused activities, and diminished awareness, such as during sleep or moments of mind wandering. One of the key distinctions in consciousness research is between conscious processing and unconscious processing. While we are aware of some thoughts, perceptions, and sensations, much of what happens in the brain remains outside of our awareness. For example, when you drive a familiar route, you might find that you reach your destination without consciously thinking about the specific actions involved in driving. This is an example of unconscious processing, where the brain handles routine tasks without requiring conscious awareness. Awareness becomes particularly important when we consider more complex forms of consciousness, such as self-awareness. Self-awareness is the ability to reflect on one's own thoughts, emotions, and experiences. It allows us to recognize ourselves as individuals distinct from the environment and others. This form of awareness is central to our sense of identity and plays a crucial role in decision-making, moral reasoning, and social interactions. The interaction between attention and awareness. Attention and awareness are deeply interconnected, but they are not the same thing. It is possible to be aware of something without directing focused attention to it, and vice versa. For example, you might be aware of the hum of an air conditioner in the background while reading a book, but you are not necessarily paying attention to it. However, if the noise suddenly changes or becomes louder, your attention might shift to it. The relationship between attention and awareness is complex, and researchers have proposed several models to explain how the two processes interact. One influential model is the global workspace theory, which suggests that attention serves as a gateway to awareness. According to this theory, when we attend to a specific stimulus, it enters the brain's global workspace, a mental space where information is made available to other cognitive processes, such as memory, decision-making, and language. Only information that reaches this global workspace becomes part of our conscious awareness, while other information remains in the background, processed unconsciously. Another key idea is that attention and awareness are hierarchical. Lower levels of awareness might involve basic sensory information, such as the feeling of warmth or the sound of distant traffic, while higher levels of awareness involve complex, reflective thinking. Attention helps determine what information moves up this hierarchy and enters higher levels of awareness. If you're enjoying this audiobook and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. Consciousness and the role of attention. Given the role of attention in shaping what we are aware of, it is no surprise that attention is crucial to our overall conscious experience. When we focus our attention on something, we become more aware of it, and it often takes on greater significance in our perception of reality. Attention can even alter our subjective experience of time, making certain moments seem longer or shorter depending on how focused we are on them. Attention is also essential for voluntary control over our thoughts and actions. By directing our attention, we can choose what to focus on and which thoughts to pursue. This ability to control attention is a key aspect of conscious will, allowing us to engage in goal-directed behavior and deliberate decision-making. Without attention, we would lack the ability to exert control over our mental processes and would be subject to the automatic workings of unconscious processes. At the same time, attention can be involuntary. Certain stimuli, such as loud noises or bright lights, automatically capture our attention, even if we are focused on something else. This reflexive attention is an adaptive mechanism that helps us respond quickly to potential threats or changes in our environment. Disorders of attention and awareness. Disruptions in attention and awareness can have profound effects on consciousness. Several neurological and psychological disorders are characterized by impairments in these processes, leading to altered or diminished conscious experiences. Attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, ADHD is a condition that affects the brain's ability to regulate attention. Individuals with ADHD often struggle with sustained attention, are easily distracted, and may have difficulty concentrating on tasks. This can lead to challenges in learning, working, and social interactions. Neglect syndrome. Neglect syndrome occurs when there is damage to the right parietal lobe of the brain, which controls spatial awareness. People with neglect syndrome may be unaware of objects or events on the left side of their visual field, even though they are not blind. This condition highlights the importance of attention and conscious perception, as the affected individuals are not consciously aware of the neglected side of space. Blind sight. Blind sight is a phenomenon where individuals with damage to the primary visual cortex, the part of the brain responsible for conscious vision, can respond to visual stimuli without being aware of seeing them. For example, a person with blind sight might be able to navigate around obstacles or guess the location of a light without consciously perceiving it. This condition provides a striking example of how attention and awareness can be dissociated, with the brain processing visual information unconsciously even when it does not reach conscious awareness. Coma and vegetative states. Coma and vegetative states are conditions in which individuals have severely diminished or absent levels of consciousness. In a coma, the individual is completely unresponsive and unaware of their surroundings. In a vegetative state, there may be periods of wakefulness, but the person remains unresponsive and unaware. These conditions raise important questions about the nature of consciousness and what happens when awareness is lost. The role of meditation and mindfulness. Meditation and mindfulness practices provide fascinating insights into the relationship between attention and awareness. These practices involve training the mind to focus attention on the present moment, often through concentration on breathing, bodily sensations, or specific thoughts. Over time, this training enhances the brain's ability to control attention and increases overall awareness. Mindfulness meditation, in particular, emphasizes non-judgmental awareness of thoughts, emotions, and sensations as they arise. Practitioners learn to observe their experiences without becoming attached to them or reacting automatically. This heightened awareness can lead to a greater sense of clarity, calm, and self-understanding, as individuals become more aware of their mental and emotional patterns. Research has shown that meditation can have measurable effects on the brain, including increased activity in the prefrontal cortex, which is involved in attention and self-awareness, and the anterior cingulate cortex, which regulates emotional responses. These findings suggest that attention and awareness are not fixed traits but can be developed and enhanced through practice. Attention and awareness are fundamental to the conscious experience. Attention allows us to focus on specific stimuli, enabling selective processing of the vast array of sensory and cognitive information that we encounter. Awareness provides the broader context for these experiences, giving us the ability to reflect on and interpret the world around us. The dynamic interaction between attention and awareness shapes our reality, influencing what we perceive, how we think, and how we interact with our environment. Understanding these processes provides crucial insights into the final understandings of consciousness and mind. Chapter 5: The Role of Memory in Consciousness. Memory is an essential component of consciousness. It connects our past experiences with the present moment, allowing us to maintain a sense of continuity in our identity and understanding of the world. Without memory, we would exist only in the present, lacking the ability to learn, plan, or reflect on our lives. This chapter explores the relationship between memory and consciousness, examining how different types of memory contribute to our conscious experience and how memory shapes our perception of reality. Types of memory. Memory is not a single, unified process, but rather a collection of systems that store and retrieve different kinds of information. These systems are generally divided into two broad categories: short-term memory, or working memory, and long-term memory. 1. Short-term memory. Working memory. Short-term memory holds information for a brief period, usually seconds to minutes. This is the memory system that allows us to keep a phone number in mind long enough to dial it or to remember a sentence while reading through a paragraph. Short-term memory has limited capacity and is easily disrupted by distractions. Working memory, a subset of short-term memory, refers to the ability to hold and manipulate information in mind over short intervals. It plays a crucial role in conscious thought, problem-solving, and decision-making. For example, when performing mental calculations or following instructions, working memory is the mental workspace that allows us to keep track of relevant information. 2. Long-term memory. Long-term memory stores information for extended periods, from hours to a lifetime. It is the repository of our knowledge, skills, and experiences. Long-term memory is divided into several subtypes, each serving different functions in consciousness. Explicit, declarative memory. Explicit memory refers to memories that can be consciously recalled, such as facts and events. It is further divided into semantic memory, knowledge of facts and concepts, such as knowing that Paris is the capital of France, and episodic memory, memories of personal experiences, such as recalling your last birthday party. Episodic memory is particularly important for creating a coherent sense of self, as it allows us to remember and reflect on our own life story. Implicit, non-declarative memory. Implicit memory operates below the level of conscious awareness and includes procedural memories, such as knowing how to ride a bike or type on a keyboard. Implicit memory enables us to perform tasks automatically, without needing to consciously think about each step. Memory and the construction of identity. One of the most important roles memory plays in consciousness is the construction of personal identity. Our sense of self is deeply intertwined with our memories, especially those that make up our autobiographical history. Without memory, the continuity of self would be lost, and each moment would be experienced in isolation, without context. Episodic memory is particularly crucial for this process, as it allows us to recall specific events from our past and reflect on how they have shaped who we are today. These memories form the narrative of our lives, giving us a sense of continuity across time. When we reflect on our personal history, we engage in an ongoing process of self-construction, using memory to maintain a stable sense of identity. For example, if you remember graduating from college, you not only recall the event itself but also the feelings, thoughts, and experiences associated with it. This memory becomes part of your self-concept, contributing to your understanding of your abilities, achievements, and relationships. In this way, memory serves as the foundation for self-awareness, the ability to think about oneself as an individual with a unique past, present, and future. Self-awareness is a key aspect of consciousness, and it depends heavily on our capacity to remember and reflect on personal experiences. Memory and conscious experience. Memory plays a fundamental role in shaping our moment-to-moment conscious experience. Every time we perceive something, our brain compares the new information to stored memories, allowing us to recognize objects, people, and situations. This process happens so quickly and effortlessly that we are usually not aware of it, but it is essential for making sense of the world. For example, when you see a familiar face, your brain immediately retrieves the memory of that person, along with associated emotions, thoughts, and past interactions. This allows you to recognize the person and respond appropriately, whether with a greeting or a smile. Without memory, each encounter would be a novel experience, and we would be unable to navigate the social world effectively. Semantic memory, or our knowledge of facts and concepts, also plays a key role in conscious thought. Whenever we engage in tasks that require reasoning, planning, or decision-making, we draw on semantic memory to access relevant information. For instance, when making a decision about what to eat for lunch, you rely on memories of previous meals, your knowledge of different foods, and your understanding of nutritional needs. Working memory is particularly important for tasks that require active thought and attention. It allows us to hold information in mind while performing complex tasks, such as following a conversation, solving a math problem, or planning a route to a destination. Working memory is essential for conscious thought, as it enables us to keep relevant information accessible while making decisions or solving problems. Memory and learning. Memory is essential for learning, which is the process of acquiring new information and skills. Without the ability to form memories, we would be unable to retain new knowledge or improve our abilities over time. Memory allows us to build on past experiences, using them to inform future actions. There are two main types of learning that rely on memory. Explicit learning. This type of learning involves the conscious acquisition of new information, such as studying for a test or learning a new language. Explicit learning relies on declarative memory, especially semantic memory, to store facts, concepts, and rules. Implicit learning. Implicit learning occurs without conscious awareness and often involves the gradual acquisition of skills through practice. For example, learning to ride a bike or play a musical instrument involves implicit memory, as these skills become automatic with repetition. Both types of learning are crucial for functioning in the world, and they depend on the brain's ability to encode, store, and retrieve memories. The neural basis of memory. Memory is supported by several brain regions that work together to encode, store, and retrieve information. The hippocampus, located in the medial temporal lobe, is one of the most important structures for memory, especially for forming new episodic memories. Damage to the hippocampus can result in anterograde amnesia, the inability to form new long-term memories, as seen in famous cases such as that of patient HM. The prefrontal cortex plays a key role in working memory and is involved in holding and manipulating information in the short term. This area of the brain is essential for tasks that require planning, decision-making, and problem-solving, as it allows us to keep relevant information accessible while performing complex cognitive tasks. Other brain regions, such as the amygdala, are involved in the emotional aspects of memory. The amygdala plays a crucial role in the formation of emotional memories, particularly those related to fear and other survival-related emotions. This explains why emotionally charged events, such as traumatic experiences, are often remembered more vividly than neutral events. The fragility of memory. Despite its importance, memory is not a perfect recording of past events. Memories are highly susceptible to distortion, and they can be influenced by various factors, including emotions, suggestion, and the passage of time. Research has shown that memory is reconstructive, meaning that when we recall an event, we do not retrieve a precise copy of the original experience. Instead, we reconstruct the memory based on fragments of the original event, combined with our current knowledge, beliefs, and emotions. This reconstructive nature of memory can lead to false memories, in which people recall events that never actually occurred or remember details that are incorrect. False memories can be influenced by suggestion, such as when a person is led to believe they experienced something through leading questions or misleading information. The fallibility of memory has important implications for various areas of life, including eyewitness testimony in legal settings, where the accuracy of memory is often critical. Memory and consciousness in disorders. Certain neurological conditions and brain injuries can impair memory, leading to profound changes in consciousness. Amnesia, for example, can affect a person's ability to recall past events, retrograde amnesia, or form new memories, anterograde amnesia. This can result in a fragmented sense of self, as the individual loses access to important parts of their personal history. In conditions like Alzheimer's disease, memory loss gradually erodes the individual's ability to recognize people, places, and even their own identity. As memory deteriorates, so does the person's conscious experience of the world, leading to confusion, disorientation, and a diminishing sense of self. Dissociative disorders, such as dissociative amnesia, involve disruptions in memory that are often related to trauma. In these cases, individuals may lose access to specific memories or aspects of their identity, leading to gaps in consciousness and a sense of disconnection from their own experiences. Memory is a cornerstone of consciousness, linking our past, present, and future. It allows us to maintain a sense of identity, learn from experience, and navigate the world with purpose. Whether through short-term working memory or long-term episodic and semantic memory, the brain's ability to store and retrieve information is fundamental to our conscious experience. However, memory is not infallible. It is susceptible to distortion, decay, and disruption. Understanding the complex relationship between memory and consciousness provides critical insights into how we experience the world and ourselves. Chapter 6: Consciousness in the Future: Philosophical, Ethical, and Technological Implications. As we conclude this exploration of consciousness, it is essential to reflect on its implications for the future, particularly in the realms of philosophy, ethics, and technology. Understanding consciousness not only expands our knowledge of the human mind, but also influences our interactions with each other, our moral responsibilities, and our development of artificial intelligence, AI. In this chapter, we will examine the philosophical inquiries related to consciousness, the ethical dilemmas that arise from advancements in neuroscience and AI, and the technological innovations that challenge our understanding of consciousness. Philosophical implications of consciousness. Philosophy has long grappled with the concept of consciousness, raising questions about the nature of reality, the self, and the mind-body relationship. As we continue to study consciousness, we must consider how new findings inform these philosophical debates. The mind-body problem. The mind-body problem is a fundamental philosophical issue concerning the relationship between mental states and physical processes in the brain. How does subjective experience arise from neural activity? Traditional views, such as dualism, argue that the mind and body are separate entities, while materialism asserts that consciousness arises solely from physical processes. As neuroscience advances, revealing the neural correlates of consciousness, materialist perspectives gain traction. However, the hard problem of consciousness still poses challenges to fully explaining how subjective experiences emerge from brain activity. Personal identity. Consciousness is intricately tied to our sense of personal identity. Philosophers like John Locke have argued that continuity of consciousness is essential for maintaining identity over time. However, the nature of this continuity raises questions. If memories can be altered or lost, how does this affect our identity? Moreover, if we could transfer consciousness to another medium, such as a computer, what would happen to our sense of self? These inquiries challenge our understanding of what it means to be an individual and force us to reconsider the boundaries of identity. Free will. The concept of free will is another area where consciousness intersects with philosophy. If our conscious decisions are ultimately determined by neural processes, can we claim to be truly free? Determinism suggests that all events, including human actions, are determined by preceding causes, which raises questions about moral responsibility. Alternatively, compatibilist perspectives argue that free will can exist alongside determinism, provided that individuals can act according to their desires and intentions. As research on consciousness evolves, it may provide insights into the nature of free will and its implications for moral responsibility. Ethical considerations in consciousness research. As our understanding of consciousness expands, ethical dilemmas arise regarding its implications for individuals, society, and technology. The following areas warrant careful consideration. Mental health and treatment. Advances in neuroscience have the potential to revolutionize the treatment of mental health disorders. However, ethical questions arise about how we use this knowledge. For example, if we discover specific neural correlates of depression, should we prioritize pharmacological treatments that target these areas, or should we consider holistic approaches that account for psychological, social, and environmental factors? Additionally, the development of brain-computer interfaces raises ethical concerns about consent, privacy, and potential misuse of technology. Artificial intelligence and consciousness. As AI technology advances, the question of whether machines can become conscious arises. If we create AI systems that exhibit behaviors similar to human consciousness, how should we treat them? Should they have rights, and what responsibilities do we have toward them? The ethical implications of creating conscious machines extend beyond mere rights. They also involve considerations of safety, accountability, and the potential consequences of AI systems acting autonomously. Neuroethics. Neuroethics is an emerging field that addresses the ethical implications of neuroscience research and its applications. As we develop technologies that can enhance or alter consciousness, such as cognitive enhancers or neurostimulation devices, we must grapple with the potential consequences. Who should have access to these technologies, and what impact might they have on social equity? Moreover, the possibility of using neuroscience for purposes such as lie detection or behavioral prediction raises questions about privacy and autonomy. Technological innovations in consciousness. The rapid advancement of technology offers exciting possibilities for exploring and understanding consciousness. Several key areas of innovation are worth noting. Brain-computer interfaces, BCIs. BCIs are devices that enable direct communication between the brain and external devices. These technologies hold promise for individuals with disabilities, allowing them to control prosthetic limbs or communicate through thought alone. However, the potential for BCIs extends beyond rehabilitation. They may also provide insights into the neural mechanisms underlying consciousness. By studying brain activity patterns associated with different cognitive states, researchers can deepen their understanding of how consciousness arises. Artificial intelligence and consciousness simulation. The development of AI systems that can mimic aspects of human thought and behavior raises questions about the nature of consciousness. While current AI lacks subjective experiences, advancements in machine learning and neural networks may eventually lead to systems that exhibit consciousness-like properties. If we succeed in creating such systems, it will necessitate a re-evaluation of our ethical frameworks and our understanding of what it means to be conscious. Virtual and augmented reality. Virtual and augmented reality technologies provide immersive experiences that can alter our perception of consciousness. These environments can simulate various sensory experiences, blurring the lines between reality and virtuality. As we explore these technologies, we must consider their potential effects on mental health, social interactions, and our understanding of reality itself. Furthermore, they may offer new avenues for studying consciousness by allowing researchers to manipulate environments and observe changes in subjective experience. The future of consciousness research. As we look to the future, several trends and directions in consciousness research emerge. Interdisciplinary collaboration. The complexity of consciousness necessitates collaboration across disciplines, including neuroscience, psychology, philosophy, and computer science. By bringing together diverse perspectives, researchers can develop comprehensive models that account for the various dimensions of consciousness. This interdisciplinary approach may lead to breakthroughs in understanding the nature of consciousness and its underlying mechanisms. Integration of subjective experience. Traditional scientific methods often prioritize objective measurements, which may overlook the richness of subjective experience. Future research should prioritize integrative approaches that incorporate qualitative methods, such as phenomenology, to capture the nuances of consciousness. By valuing subjective experience alongside objective data, researchers can develop a more holistic understanding of consciousness. Exploration of altered states. Continued exploration of altered states of consciousness, such as those induced by meditation, psychedelics, or sensory deprivation, may reveal insights into the nature of consciousness itself. Studying these states can deepen our understanding of how consciousness can be flexible and dynamic, offering valuable lessons about the brain's capacity for change. Conclusion. Consciousness is a multifaceted phenomenon that challenges our understanding of the mind, self, and reality. As we have explored throughout this book, consciousness intersects with philosophy, ethics, and technology, raising profound questions about our existence and our place in the world. The future of consciousness research holds immense potential, promising to deepen our understanding of the mind and its workings. However, with this promise comes the responsibility to approach these questions with care and consideration. The ethical implications of advancements in neuroscience and AI must guide our exploration, ensuring that we prioritize human dignity, autonomy, and well-being. In our quest to unravel the mysteries of consciousness, we must remain mindful of its complexity and richness. Consciousness is not merely a scientific puzzle to be solved. It is the essence of what it means to be human. As we advance in our understanding, we must embrace the philosophical inquiries it inspires, the ethical dilemmas it presents, and the transformative technologies it enables. In doing so, we can foster a future where the exploration of consciousness enriches our lives and deepens our understanding of the human experience. The nature of consciousness and its future exploration. Consciousness remains one of the most profound and mysterious aspects of human existence. Despite significant advances in neuroscience, psychology, and philosophy, we still grapple with fundamental questions about what consciousness is, how it arises, and why it exists. Throughout this book, we have explored key dimensions of consciousness, including the biological foundations, the roles of attention and awareness, the influence of memory, and how subjective experience shapes our understanding of reality. In this conclusion, we will revisit the major themes discussed in previous chapters, providing a cohesive summary of the insights gained. We will also explore how future research may continue to unravel the mysteries of consciousness and the potential impact of this knowledge on science, technology, and human life. Revisiting the biological foundations of consciousness. One of the central questions surrounding consciousness is its biological basis. We know that the brain plays a crucial role in generating conscious experience. But how exactly does the brain produce the rich, subjective world that we experience? Chapter 1 introduced the idea that consciousness arises from the activity of complex neural networks within the brain, with certain regions playing particularly important roles in generating awareness and self-reflection. The cerebral cortex, particularly the prefrontal cortex and parietal lobes, is critical for higher-order thinking, decision-making, and self-awareness. The thalamus acts as a relay station, filtering sensory information and directing it to the appropriate regions of the brain for further processing. The default mode network, a collection of brain regions that are active during rest and self-reflective thought, is closely associated with our sense of identity and internal experience. However, while we can identify these brain structures and their functions, the question of how subjective experience emerges from this activity remains unanswered. This is known as the hard problem of consciousness, a term coined by philosopher David Chalmers. The hard problem highlights the difficulty of explaining why and how neural activity gives rise to subjective experiences, often referred to as qualia, the individual, ineffable qualities of experience, such as the redness of a sunset or the taste of chocolate. Attention, awareness, and conscious experience. In Chapter 4, we explored how attention and awareness interact to shape our conscious experience. Attention acts as a spotlight, focusing our mental resources on specific stimuli while filtering out irrelevant information. This allows us to navigate a world full of sensory overload, honing in on the most important details for survival and decision-making. Awareness, on the other hand, refers to the broader state of being conscious of our surroundings and internal states. It provides the background context for our experiences, allowing us to integrate information and maintain a coherent sense of the world. The interplay between attention and awareness is crucial for creating the rich, detailed experiences that define human consciousness. The global workspace theory posits that attention helps bring certain information into conscious awareness, making it available to other cognitive processes such as memory, decision-making, and language. This theory provides a framework for understanding how consciousness arises from the interaction of various brain systems, but it still leaves open the question of how these systems create subjective experience. Memory and the continuity of self. Memory plays a fundamental role in shaping our consciousness and sense of self. As we discussed in Chapter 5, different types of memory, episodic, semantic, and procedural, contribute to our ability to navigate the world, learn from experience, and maintain a continuous identity over time. Without memory, each moment would exist in isolation, and we would be unable to connect our past with our present or future. Episodic memory, in particular, allows us to recall specific personal experiences, which are crucial for creating a coherent narrative of our lives. This narrative forms the basis of our self-concept, giving us a sense of continuity and purpose. Semantic memory provides the factual knowledge that underpins our understanding of the world, while procedural memory enables us to perform routine tasks without conscious effort. The relationship between memory and consciousness is most apparent in cases of amnesia, where individuals lose access to certain memories, disrupting their sense of self. In extreme cases, such as dissociative amnesia, individuals may even lose awareness of their identity, highlighting the deep connection between memory and conscious experience. The role of subjectivity in consciousness. Throughout this book, we have repeatedly returned to the idea that consciousness is deeply subjective. Each individual experiences the world in a unique way, shaped by their memories, emotions, and personal history. This subjectivity is what makes consciousness so challenging to study scientifically. While we can observe brain activity and measure cognitive processes, we cannot directly access another person's inner experience. This gap between objective observation and subjective experience is what makes consciousness such a difficult problem to solve. Neuroscience can tell us how the brain processes information, but it cannot explain why we have subjective experiences in the first place. This is the essence of the hard problem of consciousness, and it remains a major hurdle for scientists and philosophers alike. However, subjective experience is not only a challenge for understanding consciousness, it is also one of its most fascinating aspects. Our subjective experiences give life richness and depth, allowing us to appreciate beauty, form relationships, and reflect on our existence. Consciousness is not merely about processing information, it is about what it feels like to be alive. Future directions in consciousness research. As we look to the future, there are several promising avenues for research that may help us unlock the mysteries of consciousness. Advances in neuroscience, artificial intelligence, and quantum physics are all contributing to new ways of thinking about consciousness and how it might arise from the brain. One exciting area of research is the study of altered states of consciousness, such as those induced by meditation, psychedelics, or sleep. These states offer valuable insights into the flexible and dynamic nature of consciousness, revealing how different patterns of brain activity can lead to radically different experiences of the world. For example, research on the effects of psychedelic substances like LSD and psilocybin has shown that these drugs can temporarily dissolve the boundaries between self and world, leading to a sense of unity and altered perception. By studying these altered states, scientists hope to better understand the neural mechanisms that underlie consciousness. Another promising field is artificial intelligence, AI, and the question of whether machines can ever become conscious. While current AI systems are highly sophisticated in processing information and performing tasks, they do not have subjective experiences. The development of artificial general intelligence, AGI, AI that can perform any intellectual task that a human can, raises the question of whether consciousness could emerge in machines. If we could create a machine that not only processes information but also has subjective experiences, it would revolutionize our understanding of consciousness and challenge our assumptions about what it means to be conscious. Quantum theories of consciousness also offer an intriguing, if controversial, perspective. Some researchers, such as physicist Roger Penrose and anesthesiologist Stuart Hameroff, have proposed that quantum processes within neurons may play a role in generating consciousness. While this theory remains speculative and lacks widespread acceptance, it suggests that consciousness might arise from fundamental processes at the quantum level, rather than from classical brain activity alone. The impact of consciousness research on society. As our understanding of consciousness deepens, the potential applications of this knowledge are vast. Advances in neuroscience and AI could lead to new treatments for mental health disorders, such as depression, anxiety, and PTSD. By better understanding the neural mechanisms that underlie consciousness, we may be able to develop more effective interventions for conditions that disrupt conscious experience. In addition, research on consciousness could have profound implications for fields such as law, ethics, and technology. For example, a deeper understanding of consciousness might influence how we think about personal responsibility, free will, and moral agency. If we can better understand the neural and psychological factors that drive behavior, it could reshape our legal and ethical frameworks, particularly in areas like criminal justice and artificial intelligence. Finally, the study of consciousness has the potential to transform our understanding of the human experience itself. By exploring the nature of subjective experience, we can gain insights into the fundamental nature of reality, the mind, and the self. Consciousness is not just a scientific puzzle, it is the core of what makes us human. Final thoughts. Consciousness is the essence of our existence. It defines our experience of the world, shapes our identity, and gives meaning to our lives. Throughout this book, we have explored the many facets of consciousness, from its biological foundations to its role in attention, memory, and subjective experience. While we have made significant progress in understanding consciousness, much remains unknown, and the hard problem of explaining subjective experience persists. As we move forward, continued research in neuroscience, AI, and other disciplines will likely yield new insights into this profound mystery. Consciousness is not just a scientific challenge, it is a philosophical and existential one as well. By deepening our understanding of consciousness, we not only advance our knowledge of the brain and mind, but also enrich our appreciation of what it means to be alive. Copyright 2024 by AudioBooksTube. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth. New videos on a daily basis.